My boyfriend's rich family called me trash at dinner. Then his grandfather handed me the family fortune. They didn't just dislike me. They studied me like I didn't belong in their world. And then they said it out loud, at a dinner table surrounded by crystal glasses, expensive silence, and people who thought wealth made them superior. Trash like her doesn't last in this family. But what they didn't know was simple. The only person at that table who actually understood their legacy was me. And by the end of that night, the man they all feared most would rewrite everything in my name. My name is *** Samantha Reed ***. I am *** 32 years old ***, and I live in *** Boston, Massachusetts, USA ***. And this is the story of how being humiliated by a wealthy family turned into the moment I inherited the power they believed they were born to own. I met Ethan Carlisle during a consulting project between firms. He was calm, intelligent, soft-spoken. Not like his family. Not like the world he came from. We didn't fall in love quickly. It was slow, careful, real. But from the beginning, I knew one thing. His family would never accept me. The Carlisles weren't just wealthy. They were old-money Boston elite. Real estate. Investment holdings. Generational influence. The kind of family that didn't just have power, they inherited the expectation of it. The first time I visited their home, I already felt it. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was measured. Controlled. Judging. Ethan warned me gently before dinner. "They're traditional," he said. "That's one way to describe it," I replied. I should have left at that moment. I didn't. The dinner was held in their main estate. Long table. Perfect lighting. Staff moving like shadows. His mother barely acknowledged me. His aunt looked at me like I was temporary. And his cousins didn't even try to hide their expressions. The conversation started politely, then shifted quickly. "So," his uncle said, looking directly at me, "what exactly does your family do?" Before I could answer, Ethan tried to step in. But I stopped him, because I wasn't there to be hidden. "I work in strategic operations consulting," I said calmly. A pause. Then a small laugh from someone down the table. "Consulting," his aunt repeated. As in, advising people who actually run companies. It wasn't a question. It was dismissal wrapped in tone. I didn't react, because reacting is what they wanted. But then came the line that changed the entire night. His cousin leaned forward slightly, smirking, and said, "Let's be honest. She's just lucky Ethan hasn't realized what this looks like yet." Silence followed. Not awkward silence. Intentional silence. Waiting for me to break. I didn't. Instead, I looked at Ethan. He was uncomfortable. Not agreeing. Not defending. Just trapped between worlds. And that's when his grandfather spoke. Until that moment, he hadn't said a word. Just observed. Arthur Carlisle. The man the entire family still deferred to. Even now. Even in retirement. Even in silence. He looked at me carefully. Not like the others. Not dismissively. Curiously. Then he said, "You've met my grandson in a professional setting." "Yes," I replied. He nodded once. Then asked, "And you stayed even after knowing this family?" I paused. Then answered honestly, "Yes." That was the moment everything shifted. Because he didn't smile. He didn't judge. He didn't react like the rest of them. He simply studied me differently. Then he did something unexpected. He stood up, slowly, and tapped his glass. The room went silent instantly. Not out of respect for the dinner. Out of fear of him. Arthur Carlisle looked around the table, then spoke. You all seem very confident in your opinions tonight. No one interrupted. Then he turned toward me and said something no one expected. Come with me. Ethan stood up immediately, confused, nervous, but his grandfather raised a hand slightly, stopping him without effort. Only I followed. We walked through the estate hallway in silence. No explanation. No warning. Just movement. Finally, he stopped in a private study. Dark wood. Old books. A heavy desk that looked older than most of the people in the house. He sat down, gestured for me to sit opposite him. Then he said something that changed everything. You're not like the rest of them. I stayed quiet, because statements like that usually come before tests. He continued. This family will assume wealth defines intelligence. He paused, then looked directly at me. It doesn't. That was the first time I felt like I was being evaluated properly. Not socially. Strategically. Then he slid a document across the desk. A legal trust agreement. I didn't open it immediately. He said, this family has spent decades preparing for succession. Then added, and none of them are ready for it. I finally looked at the document, and what I saw made no immediate sense. Until it did. It wasn't just inheritance paperwork. It was a controlling trust structure, a governance mechanism, a power transfer system, and my name was already partially referenced in it. I looked up at him. Why me? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Because they respect bloodline, he said. And I respect judgment. Silence again. Then he added the final line. And you're the only person here who hasn't tried to impress me. That was the difference. The family tried to inherit power through entitlement. He was offering it through assessment. Back in the dining room, nothing had changed. They were still laughing, still judging, still assuming hierarchy. They had no idea what was happening in the other room. No idea what decision was being prepared. No idea their certainty was about to collapse. When I returned, Ethan looked relieved, but confused. His grandfather walked back in after me. Calm, composed, then tapped the table lightly. Dinner is over, he said. Confusion. Whispers. Surprise. Then he looked at me again and said something that made the entire room freeze. From this point forward, she will be involved in family governance discussions. Silence turned into shock. His aunt laughed nervously. That's not how this works. Arthur didn't even look at her. It is now. And then he added the final sentence. Because I have decided she understands this family better than most of you already inside it. No one spoke after that. Not immediately. Not easily. Not ever in the same way again. And Ethan, he looked at me like he was seeing a version of reality he had never been shown before. But I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about the document. The structure. The power shift that had already begun quietly before anyone realized. Because what they called trash had just been placed at the center of their legacy. The moment Arthur Carlisle made his announcement, the room didn't react like people who had just heard something surprising. They reacted like people whose reality had just been rewritten without permission. And rich families hate one thing more than anything: losing control of the narrative. At first, there was silence. Not respect. Shock. Then his aunt finally spoke. Her voice sharp but forced. Father, you can't be serious. She's not family. Arthur didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. She will be, he said simply. That sentence landed heavier than any argument. Because it wasn't emotional. It was final. I stood there quietly, watching the shift happen in real time. The same people who had called me trash less than an hour ago were now calculating damage control in their heads. Ethan looked at me like he wanted to say something. But he didn't, because even he didn't fully understand what had just been set in motion. Arthur slid another document toward me. This one was heavier, more detailed. "This is a temporary trustee designation," he said. Then added, "Effective immediately." I didn't touch it right away. Because once you accept something like that, you don't just enter a family. You enter its conflicts. His son, Ethan's father, finally stood up. Visibly angry now. Controlled, but barely. "This bypasses all succession structure," he said. Arthur nodded. "Yes," he replied. That single word ended the argument before it began. Because everything they believed about control was based on assumption. And assumption means nothing against authority already documented. I finally sat down again, slowly. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I was processing scale. This wasn't just inheritance. It was operational control over multiple holding assets. Real estate portfolios, private equity stakes, board voting rights, and more importantly, decision authority. The same people who mocked my presence at dinner were now technically under governance I had been assigned to review. They just didn't realize how formal that already was. After a long pause, Arthur stood again. "You don't need to decide tonight," he said to me. Then added something quieter. "But understand this. Decisions have already been made about you. You are simply being informed now." That distinction mattered. Because most people think power is about choosing. In reality, it's often about realizing you were already chosen. The dinner ended shortly after. Not socially. Structurally. Arthur dismissed everyone. One by one. No discussion. No debate. Just controlled exit. The family didn't look at me as they left. Except Ethan. He paused for a moment beside me. "I didn't know any of this was happening," he said quietly. I believed him, because he looked genuinely unprepared for it. "I know," I replied. That was all. Because anything more would have been emotional, not necessary. Later that night, Arthur asked me to stay. Just for a final conversation. The house was empty now. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that follows disruption. We sat in the same study again. This time, no documents between us. Just clarity. He spoke first. "I didn't choose you to provoke them," he said. I nodded slightly. "I know." He studied me for a moment. Then continued. "I chose you because you didn't behave like someone trying to enter wealth." That line stayed with me. Because it was accurate in a way most people never articulate. Then he added something more important. "This family has survived for generations by misunderstanding competence." A pause. "And it is finally starting to cost them." I finally asked the question I had been holding. "Why not choose Ethan?" Arthur exhaled slowly. Not frustration. Understanding. "Ethan will inherit emotion," he said. Then looked at me directly. "You will inherit structure." That was the difference. Emotion maintains legacy. Structure maintains control. The next morning, everything shifted officially. Legal teams were involved. Trust documentation was activated. Internal governance notifications were issued. I was no longer just Ethan's girlfriend. I was now formally attached to decision oversight functions within the Carlisle Holdings structure. And the family found out in the worst way possible. Not through conversation. Through compliance notices. The reaction was immediate. Calls. Emails. Meetings. Arguments. But none of it mattered. Because legal structure doesn't respond to emotional disagreement. Ethan tried to reach me later that day. We met outside the estate. Not inside. Too much noise there. He looked overwhelmed. Not angry. Just trying to understand the shape of what his life had become overnight. "Are you going to take control of everything?" he asked. It was a fair question. I answered honestly. "I'm not taking anything," I said. "Your grandfather already assigned structure. I'm just operating within it." That was the truth. And he knew it. He nodded slowly. Then said something unexpected. "They're going to hate you." I replied without hesitation. They already did. That was the difference. Nothing had changed emotionally. Only formally. Over the next few weeks, the family attempted internal restructuring resistance. Lawyers. Board discussions. Private negotiations. But Arthur had already anticipated all of it. Everything was documented. Everything was enforceable. Everything was final. And slowly, something happened that no one expected. They stopped arguing about whether I belonged, and started arguing about how much control they had lost. Because that's what happens when power is no longer theoretical. It becomes measurable. One evening, Arthur called me one last time. His voice was weaker than before. Not physically. Structurally. "You are doing well," he said. I didn't respond immediately, because I understood what that meant. It wasn't praise. It was confirmation. Then he added something I didn't expect. "Don't let them convince you this was about revenge." I stayed quiet. "This was about correction," he finished. And he was right. Because revenge is emotional. Correction is structural. Months later, the Carlisle family had changed. Not publicly. Internally. Some members adapted. Some resisted. Some left entirely. Ethan stayed close to me. Not in confusion anymore, but in understanding. And me. I never became what they feared. I became what they couldn't ignore. Because in the end, they called me trash at a dinner table. But the only person who understood their entire system was the one they never respected enough to see coming.